So today we're going to be making brown beef stock, and this stock serves as the base for the classic French mother sauce Espagnole, and of course demi glace as well. It's also the cooking liquid in French onion soup and a lot of other soups. It's also the base for a lot of rich brown sauces that accompany steaks. And I've got a shitload of beef bones here, so let's not waste any more time and let's get to this. So today I'm going to be using beef neck bones for my stock. And what I like about these is they have a good amount of meat that's attached to the bones. You do get more flavor from the meats and you get more gelatin from the bones. So it's good to have sort of a combination of the two. I usually like to add a few knuckle bones into the stock as well. Those are often labeled as soup bones, but the store didn't have any of those this time around, so oh well. And I realize beef parts can be kind of pricey, so if you're looking for a more budget-friendly alternative, I suggest pork neck bones. And it's important to point out here that most of the flavor in brown stock doesn't come from the particular animal that you're using, rather it comes from the caramelization process and the deep roasting of all of the ingredients that goes through this. That's where you're going to get most of your flavor. Okay, the first thing we need to do here is to blot the bones dry with paper towels. If you skip this step, you're likely to produce a lot of steam, which will inhibit browning. And after you're finished with that, coat the pieces with oil. This will promote even heat distribution and therefore even browning. They're now ready to go into a preheated 450-degree oven, and a single pan will take about 45 minutes, but as you can see I snuck in a second pan while you weren't looking, so this took just over an hour to get done. And what you're looking for here is a deep caramelization all across the surface with a good amount of fond development on the bottom of the pan. If you're wondering whether yours are browned enough, the answer in most cases is probably not. You don't want to cut this short. The flavor and color of the finished product will suffer if you do. Let's go ahead and add the bones to the pot, and we're going to add a bit of hot water to the tray or trays, and we can scrape up the fond because that's also a very important component of a properly made brown stock. A wooden or metal spatula will work for this, and you'll probably notice some other gunk and impurities on the pan too. Don't worry about trying to separate everything out in this stage. You'll have a chance to do that here in a minute. For now though, just scrape everything together, and once you're done with all of that, add it all to the stock pot and place the pot into the sink and fill it up with cold water. You want the height of the water to be about 2 or 3 inches above the height of the bones. And like I mentioned in a previous video about chicken stock, starting stocks in cold water allows for gradual extraction, so that's important here. And one thing you'll notice is that all the gunk and impurities from the sheet tray a minute ago have settled onto the top of the stock pot, so we can get a mixing bowl ready with hot water so we can remove all of that stuff at this point. Once you've skimmed everything off, allow the stock to come to a light boil where there will be enough upward pressure and agitation to push the protein-based impurities to the surface so they can be removed. This strong of a boil is a bit much, but as long as it doesn't stay in that range, the whole thing will be okay. And once you're done skimming everything off, bring the heat down to a gentle simmer, and that's where it'll stay the rest of the way. So this stock needs to sit like this for about 6 hours now, but we're going to start getting our vegetables ready in about 4 hours because we have to roast those too. So through the magic of editing, we're going to travel through time like this. There are different schools of thought on when to add vegetables to stock pots. A lot of recipes add them from the very beginning and cook them into the stock the entire duration. But adding them later on in the process allows for flavor extraction, but they're not cooked to the point to where flavor components completely break down and they're lost altogether. Cooking them into the stock for about 30 to 45 minutes is ideal. Once you have all of your vegetables cut up, place them onto a sheet tray and toss them with a small amount of oil and roast them in a 450-degree oven for about 15 or 20 minutes until they become lightly browned. Then take them out of the oven and add roughly 1.5 tablespoons of tomato paste, toss the whole thing together and place them back into the oven for another 10 minutes or so, or until the tomato paste becomes lightly toasted. The reason for doing it this way is that the tomato paste would likely burn before the vegetables have a chance to cook and brown themselves. I know I've mentioned this in prior videos, but the tube form of tomato paste is much more practical than the canned form. Dispersing and storing are much easier. And once you're done with all of that, go ahead and add everything from the tray into the stock pot, and once again we need to clean and scrape whatever fond is remaining on the tray. This time though, instead of using water, I'm actually going to use the stock liquid from the pot itself. I'm using a silicone spatula here, but obviously a metal or wooden spatula will also work. It's important with brown stock to not shortchange any of these parts of the procedure. No one wants a sauce that's supposed to be a rich, deep roasted brown color to be all pale and shit. Once you've added all of the contents of the tray to the stock pot, we're also going to add a small handful of parsley, a few sprigs of thyme, and 2 bay leaves into the stock pot as well. Give everything a stir and allow the pot to simmer for 30 to 45 minutes, and when you're all finished up with that, we can go ahead and strain everything through a strainer lined with a few layers of cheesecloth. The pot is quite heavy at this point, so what I like to do is pull out some of the solids and discard them first before straining it. The pot will still be heavy, but making it lighter will make it easier to handle. And if you're concerned about the pot being too heavy to handle, don't be afraid to use a cup or a small sauce pot to scoop everything out with. It's not worth burning yourself or making a huge mess, so figure out what works best for you and go with that. Something I would like to mention here is the term remoulage, which translates to rewetting or rewetting of the bones. It is essentially a secondary stock made from the leftover bones of the primary stock. To prepare a remoulage, take the leftover bones, combine them with fresh mirepoix and fresh herbs, add water, and bring it up to a simmer for about an hour. The secondary stock will be significantly less flavorful and colorful than the initial stock. It is generally used as the liquid when preparing stock from fresh bones. It can also be used in place of water when cooking rice, pasta, or vegetables. Okay, once you've strained the stock pot, allow it to cool for an hour or two before placing it into the fridge to cool overnight. And once you come back the next day, you'll notice that most of the fat has solidified on the surface. Go ahead and skim all of that off. You can now evaluate the quality of the finished product, and you should have at least somewhat of a gel-like consistency, meaning that you successfully broke down the collagen and connective tissue into gelatin during the process. And all that's left to do now is to place the stock into Tupperware containers or whatever containers of your choice and place them into the freezer. And with that, we've reached the end of the video. Thanks for tuning in and see you next time.